I used to think marriage was a partnership. 11 years with Amelia taught me it was more like venture capital. I provided the funding, she built the empire, and somehow I ended up as the silent partner with no voting rights. The signs were there long before I found the emails. Amelia had always been ambitious, razor sharp in that way that made law professors nod approvingly. When we met, she was clawing her way through Duquesne's evening program, working days at a personal injury mill in the Strip District. I was the steady boyfriend who brought dinner to her study sessions, who listened to her practice opening statements in our cramped apartment bathroom mirror. After graduation, she landed at Morrison, Klein & Associates, one of Pittsburgh's white shoe firms. Corporate law, mergers, the kind of work that came with mahogany conference tables and clients who owned steel mills. I built her first client management system on our kitchen table, wrote custom encryption protocols to protect attorney-client privilege. She kissed my forehead and called me her secret weapon. That was 7 years ago. These days, she barely looked up from her phone when I spoke. The transformation happened gradually, like rust spreading through steel. First came the subtle corrections, how I held my fork at firm dinners, the way I pronounced amuse-bouche at some partner's anniversary party. Then the phone addiction, text messages during movies, emails during dinner, urgent calls that couldn't wait until after we'd finished making love. "It's the Peterson merger," she'd say, sliding out of bed to take another call from Richard Blackwood, the senior partner who'd become her mentor. "You know how these deals are." I knew how they were. I'd automated half the due diligence software their firm used. The passive disdain started small. Comments wrapped in lawyer speak, delivered with that practiced smile she used on hostile witnesses. "Nathan's more of a behind-the-scenes type," she'd tell people at cocktail parties, her hand on my arm like she was restraining a dog. "He's brilliant with computers, but you know how technical people are with social situations." I'd smile and nod, play the agreeable husband who didn't notice the way her colleagues exchanged glances. Last month, our home Wi-Fi started dropping signals in the evenings. Amelia complained it was interfering with her work calls, so I spent a Thursday night crawling around our Shadyside townhouse, checking router placement and signal strength. That's when I noticed her laptop was logged into an iCloud backup. Not her primary account, but one tied to an old work email she'd used at the injury mill. I shouldn't have looked. Marriage counselors probably have entire chapters about respecting digital privacy. But the backup was running automatically, pulling data from her phone, and there was something clinical about the way I clicked through the folders, like debugging code, following logic trees to their conclusions. The photos weren't what broke me. Sure, seeing Amelia's body pressed against Richard Blackwood's in what looked like his home office made my stomach clench. But I'd suspected the affair for months. What destroyed something deeper was the email thread between them, saved in her drafts folder like love letters she couldn't bring herself to delete. "He packed my lunch this morning. Again. Like I'm still some broke intern who can't afford Panera. Richard, I'm making partner on his dime and he still treats me like I need taken care of." Richard's response: "At least he's trainable. Does he still do that thing where he explains your own cases back to you?" "Oh God, yes. Last week he started telling me about fiduciary duty because he read some Wikipedia article. I wanted to scream, 'I'm a f***ing attorney,' but you know how he gets when his feelings are hurt." There were dozens of messages like this. Screenshots of texts I'd sent her, grocery lists, reminders about dinner reservations, photos of our dog Willow, all forwarded to Richard with commentary. My marriage had become their private comedy show. "He bought me flowers yesterday, grocery store daisies because he thought they looked cheerful. I swear he has the aesthetic sense of a middle schooler. The same man who created million-dollar software can't figure out why I don't want to split a Subway sandwich for lunch." Sometimes I wonder what would happen if I just disappeared. Would he even notice? Or would he just keep making me coffee every morning and talking to an empty kitchen? I sat in my office chair until 3 a.m., reading through months of mockery. Every kindness I'd shown her, every gesture of support, dissected and ridiculed by the woman I'd spent 11 years loving. By the man she was in the conference room where I'd helped her prepare for her first major presentation. When Amelia came home from her late meeting that night, I was in bed with the lights off. She slipped in quietly, probably thinking I was asleep. She whispered my name once, tentatively. I didn't answer. I was busy calculating exactly how much money she'd made using systems I'd built, connections I'd helped her nurture, opportunities I'd created by being the steady, reliable husband who never asked too many questions. She wanted to laugh at the man who packed her lunches. I decided to show her what that man was really capable of when he stopped being agreeable. The morning after I found the emails, I woke up at 5:30 a.m. and made Amelia's coffee exactly the way she liked it. Medium roast, 1 sugar, splash of oat milk. I set it on her nightstand with a piece of toast cut diagonally, the way her mother used to do when she was sick as a child. "You're sweet," she murmured, barely looking up from her phone. Already checking messages, probably from Richard. "Just want to take care of you," I said, kissing her forehead. The words felt like swallowing glass, but my voice stayed steady. I'd spent 11 years learning to read her moods, anticipate her needs. Now I'd use those same skills to hide what I was really thinking. Over the next 3 weeks, I became the perfect husband. I brought her flowers, real ones from the florist on Walnut Street, not grocery store daisies. I made dinner reservations at restaurants I knew she'd want to post on Instagram. I asked thoughtful questions about her cases, nodded attentively when she explained legal strategies I'd helped develop years earlier. "You seem different lately," she said one evening, scrolling through her phone while I cleared the dinner dishes. "More present." "I've been thinking about us," I said, loading the dishwasher with methodical precision. "About how I can be a better partner." She smiled without looking up. "That's nice, honey." Behind my calm exterior, I was building something else entirely. Every night after Amelia fell asleep, I'd slip into my home office and work on what I privately called Project Archive. I'd already cloned her phone's backup data, but now I needed real-time monitoring. The technical aspects were straightforward. I'd designed corporate security systems that made this look like a high school programming project. A small modification to our home network router, some carefully placed tracking cookies, and I had complete visibility into her digital life. Text messages, email drafts, GPS coordinates, even deleted photos recovered from temporary files. I created redundant backup systems, encrypted databases stored on servers I controlled. Everything automatically time-stamped and cross-referenced. When Amelia told me she was working late on the Henderson acquisition, I could see she was actually at 11 Contemporary, splitting a $200 bottle of wine with Richard while her GPS coordinates updated every 30 seconds. The documentation became obsessive. I mapped her lies with forensic precision. Restaurant receipts cross-referenced with calendar entries, hotel bookings that didn't match conference locations, Uber rides that ended at Richard's address in Sewickley Heights. "I might be home late tonight," she'd say, straightening her blazer in the hallway mirror. "Client dinner." "Drive safe," I'd reply, already knowing she'd be in Richard's bed by 9 p.m. The strange thing was how easy the acting became. I'd spent years trying to anticipate Amelia's needs, reading her facial expressions like code syntax. Now I used those same skills to project exactly what she expected to see, the devoted, slightly clueless husband who believed her stories about working late. Some nights, lying next to her after she'd come home reeking of Richard's cologne, I'd feel something cold and mechanical clicking into place behind my ribs. Not rage. Rage was too hot, too volatile. This was something more precise, like a surgical instrument being sharpened. I bought her expensive lingerie, pretending not to notice she never wore it for me. I asked about her work projects, nodding sympathetically when she complained about difficult partners, while I watched her text the same difficult partner from across our kitchen table. "You've been so supportive lately," she said one morning, accepting the travel mug of coffee I'd prepared for her commute. "I know I haven't been the easiest to live with." "Marriage is work," I said, kissing her goodbye. "We're a team." As soon as her car pulled out of the driveway, I'd return to my office and continue building her digital autopsy. Every email, every photo, every location ping organized into folders labeled with dates and cross-references. The evidence wasn't just about the affair anymore. It was about the systematic way she'd weaponized my love against me. I found screenshots she'd taken of my text messages to share with Richard. Photos of birthday gifts I'd given her, sent with commentary about my pedestrian taste. Even recordings, voice memos she'd made after our conversations, dissecting my words for Richard's entertainment like I was a psychological case study. The pattern was clear. Everything I did out of love, she turned into ammunition for mockery. Every gesture of care became proof of my inadequacy in their private narrative. But they'd made one critical error. They assumed I was exactly what I appeared to be, the harmless, devoted husband who'd never fight back. They never considered that the man who'd built their security systems might know how to use those same systems against them. 3 weeks into my performance, I had enough data to reconstruct their affair minute by minute. I knew which hotels they preferred, which restaurants Richard used to impress his other conquests, exactly how much of their relationship had been conducted on firm time using firm resources. More importantly, I knew something they didn't. Affairs leave trails, and those trails become evidence, and evidence becomes power when you know how to use it properly. I was about to teach 2 attorneys a lesson about the discovery process they'd apparently forgotten since law school. Amelia thought her career was bulletproof. She'd cultivated the perfect professional image, sharp suits, measured responses, the kind of quiet competence that made clients trust her with their million-dollar problems. What she didn't realize was that her carefully constructed reputation sat on a foundation I could crumble with a few keystrokes. It started with billing records. Morrison, Klein, and Associates required detailed time entries for client work, tracked in 6-minute increments. Amelia was meticulous about documentation. She'd learned early that partners who couldn't account for their hours didn't make equity partner. Except now I could cross-reference her logged hours with GPS data from her phone. On March 15th, she'd billed 4 hours to Hartwell Industries for contract review and client consultation. Her phone showed she'd spent those 4 hours at the Fairmont Pittsburgh with Richard, never coming within 10 miles of Hartwell's offices in Cranberry Township. The pattern repeated dozens of times. Client dinners that never happened, conference calls made from hotel rooms, research sessions conducted at wine bars in Lawrenceville. She'd turned billing fraud into an art form, and I had the data to prove it. But the billing discrepancies were just the appetizer. The real feast was her relationship with Richard himself. Pennsylvania Bar Association rules are clear about sexual relationships between supervisors and subordinates in law firms. The power dynamic creates conflicts of interest, compromises professional judgment, and violates ethical duties to both clients and colleagues. Most firms have explicit policies prohibiting such relationships, especially when one party has influence over the other's partnership track. Richard Blackwood wasn't just Amelia's lover. He was the senior partner who'd shepherded her through the equity review process. He'd written her performance evaluations, recommended her for high-profile cases, and advocated for her promotion to the executive committee. Every professional advancement she'd earned in the last 3 years could be seen as tainted by their relationship. I spent evenings pulling apart their professional interactions like a forensic accountant. Case assignments that bypassed more senior associates, trial partnerships that seemed random until you factored in Richard's influence, speaking engagements at conferences where they'd shared hotel bookings. The firm's own policies became my roadmap. Morrison, Klein had a thick ethics manual, the kind of comprehensive document that covered everything from client confidentiality to appropriate social media use. I'd actually helped design their digital security protocols when they upgraded their case management system 2 years ago. Section 4.3 dealt specifically with romantic or sexual relationships between firm personnel. The language was clinical but unambiguous. Such relationships must be disclosed to management, cannot involve direct supervisory authority, and require recusal from personnel decisions affecting the subordinate partner. Richard and Amelia had violated every clause. Not only had they hidden their relationship, but Richard had actively leveraged his position to advance her career while they were sleeping together. That made every case he'd assigned her, every positive review he'd written, potentially fraudulent. I dug deeper into firm communications, using access credentials Amelia had shared years ago when I'd troubleshot her email issues. Internal memos revealed the partnership evaluation process, including Richard's glowing assessments of Amelia's exceptional commitment and mature judgment. The same mature judgment that had led her to risk both their careers for afternoon sex in empty conference rooms. But the smoking gun wasn't in their professional relationship. It was in how they'd used firm resources to conduct their affair. Email metadata showed dozens of personal messages sent through the firm's server. Credit card records I'd obtained through Amelia's shared accounts revealed client entertainment budgets used for romantic dinners. Hotel bookings charged to the firm for conferences they'd never attended. They'd turned Morrison, Klein into their personal dating service, funded by client billable hours and partnership draws. The beautiful irony was how perfectly they'd documented everything themselves. Lawyers are obsessive record keepers by training, and their affair had generated enough evidence to fill a filing cabinet. Text messages discussing case strategies between orgasms, voice memos about client meetings recorded in Richard's bedroom, email chains mixing legal advice with sexual innuendo. I organized it all into a comprehensive dossier, 138 pages of time-stamped evidence with exhibits, cross-references, and supporting documentation. Every billable hour questioned, every ethical violation cataloged, every firm policy breach highlighted with the kind of methodical precision that would make a prosecutor weep with joy. The Pennsylvania Bar Association had an anonymous reporting system for ethical violations. So did Morrison, Klein's ethics committee. Both organizations promised thorough investigation of any claims supported by credible evidence. I had enough credible evidence to end 2 careers and potentially trigger a broader investigation into the firm's oversight practices. The only question was timing. Amelia thought she was untouchable because she was smart, connected, and careful about hiding the personal aspects of her affair. What she hadn't counted on was that her husband might be smarter, more connected to their digital infrastructure, and infinitely more careful about documentation. She'd spent months mocking my attention to detail, my obsessive organization, my need to understand how systems worked. Now those same traits would dismantle everything she'd built on lies and ethical violations. Some people collect stamps. I'd spent 3 months collecting evidence of professional misconduct, and I was about to deliver the collection to people who could appreciate its true value. The first complaint went out on a Tuesday morning at 6:47 a.m., sent through a VPN that bounced my connection through servers in 3 different countries. I'd spent weeks crafting the submission to the Pennsylvania Bar Association's disciplinary board, 18 pages of clinical prose with 42 supporting exhibits, all formatted according to their published guidelines. This complaint concerns serious ethical violations by attorney Amelia Catherine Grayson, bar number 847291, involving fraudulent billing practices, undisclosed conflicts of interest, and systematic misuse of client resources. The complainant submits the attached evidence with concern for the integrity of the legal profession and protection of affected clients. I'd learned to write like a lawyer by living with one for 11 years. No emotion, no personal grievances, just facts presented with the kind of methodical precision that disciplinary boards took seriously. every billable hour discrepancy documented with GPS coordinates and time-stamped evidence, every violation of Morrison, Klein's ethics policies cross-referenced with firm communications and financial records. The second complaint followed 30 minutes later, this one addressed to Morrison, Klein's ethics committee and board of partners. I'd customized the language to focus on Richard's abuse of supervisory authority and the firm's potential liability for systematic policy violations. The enclosed evidence suggests a pattern of ethical violations that may expose Morrison, Klein, and Associates to professional malpractice claims, regulatory sanctions, and reputational damage. The complainant respectfully requests immediate investigation to protect the firm's clients and professional standing. Both complaints landed in inboxes before most people had finished their morning coffee. I'd timed the submission for maximum impact. Tuesday morning meant the documents would be processed quickly, with enough time in the week for initial investigations to begin. Then I waited. Amelia noticed nothing different that evening. She came home from her client dinner with Richard at 9:30 p.m., humming softly as she kicked off her heels in the foyer. I was reading in the living room, feet up on the coffee table, picture of domestic contentment. "Good dinner?" I asked, not looking up from my book. "Productive," she said, leaning down to kiss my forehead. "The Hartwell contract is moving forward." "That's great, honey." She had no idea that I'd already documented how she'd billed Hartwell Industries for 8 hours of work while spending the evening in Richard's bed. The GPS data was particularly detailed. Her phone had connected to his home Wi-Fi network at 6:15 p.m. and hadn't moved until she'd driven home. The first cracks appeared Thursday afternoon. Amelia's phone buzzed during dinner, and I watched her face change as she read the message. Color drained from her cheeks, and her fork clattered against her plate. "Everything okay?" I asked, cutting my steak with careful precision. "Richard's been called to meet with the managing partners tomorrow," she said, her voice tight. "Some kind of administrative review." "Probably just routine," I said, chewing thoughtfully. "Law firms love their bureaucracy." She stared at her phone for another 10 seconds, then excused herself to make a call. I could hear her pacing in the hallway, voice low and urgent, but couldn't make out specific words. When she returned, her professional mask was back in place, but I caught the tremor in her hands as she reached for her wine glass. The second crack came Monday morning. Amelia's phone rang at 7:15 a.m., earlier than Richard usually called, too early for social conversation. I was making coffee, moving around the kitchen with practiced quiet, when I heard her answer with uncharacteristic sharpness. "What do you mean, suspended?" I paused in measuring coffee grounds, staying perfectly still. "They can't just... On what grounds?" Her voice climbed an octave. "Richard, what evidence?" "Evidence of what?" The conversation lasted 12 minutes. When she emerged from the bedroom, Amelia looked like she'd aged 5 years overnight. Her professional armor was cracking, revealing something fragile and desperate underneath. "Richard's taking a leave of absence," she announced, pouring coffee with shaking hands. "Some kind of internal investigation." "That sounds serious," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "Is the firm okay?" "It's fine," she snapped, then caught herself. "Sorry, I'm just stressed. It affects some of my cases." She left for work 30 minutes early, probably to begin damage control. I spent the morning in my office, monitoring her phone's GPS coordinates as she drove directly to Morrison, Klein's offices instead of her usual stop at Starbucks. The divorce papers were served Thursday afternoon at 3:47 p.m. I'd hired Patricia Morrison from Goldstein and Associates, no relation to Amelia's firm, but with a reputation for handling high-asset dissolutions with surgical precision. The process server found Amelia in the Morrison, Klein lobby, handed her the manila envelope, and walked away before she could fully process what was happening. She called me 6 minutes later. "Nathan, what the f*** is this?" I was sitting in my home office watching her GPS coordinates on my monitor. She was still in the firm's lobby, probably staring at the papers in disbelief. "Divorce petition," I said calmly. "I thought it was self-explanatory." "Are you out of your mind? We can work this out. Marriage counseling, whatever you want. But divorce?" "I want consequences for your choices," I said. "The papers spell out the terms pretty clearly." She tried to negotiate, threatened to fight the settlement, promised to end things with Richard and focus on us. But I'd spent months studying our prenuptial agreement, the document she'd insisted on when her career started taking off, designed to protect her assets from any future claims. The irony was perfect. The same prenup that was supposed to shield her wealth contained a morality clause she'd demanded for mutual protection. Adultery voided her right to shared property, including the house, joint accounts, and my intellectual property investments. She'd written her own financial death warrant and signed it with a Mont Blanc pen I'd given her for passing the bar exam. "You changed the locks?" she asked when she came home that evening, standing on our front porch like a stranger. "Your things are in storage unit 247 on Brownsville Road," I said through the closed door. "I paid 3 months in advance." "Nathan, please, open the door. We need to talk about this like adults." "We tried talking like adults for 11 years, I replied. "You spent the last year talking about me like a joke. I decided to stop being funny." I could hear her crying on the other side of the door, but the sound felt distant, like something happening to someone else's life. The man who would have comforted her, who would have opened the door and tried to fix things, had been systematically destroyed by her mockery and Richard's arrogance. What was left was someone who understood that some betrayals require precise consequences, not forgiveness. The unraveling happened faster than I'd anticipated. By the end of the second week, Richard had quietly retired from Morrison, Klein under personal circumstances. The official announcement mentioned his desire to pursue other opportunities, but legal circles in Pittsburgh are small, and whispers travel fast. Amelia lasted another month before the suspension came down. The Pennsylvania Bar Association doesn't move quickly on disciplinary matters, but the evidence I'd provided was overwhelming. Fraudulent billing, ethical violations, abuse of client resources, the kind of systematic misconduct that makes regulatory bodies take notice. Her LinkedIn profile changed 3 times in 2 weeks. First, senior partner at Morrison, Klein & Associates. Then, attorney at law. Finally, just legal professional. Each revision felt like watching someone erase their own identity in real time. The house felt different without her. Quieter, but not in a peaceful way. More like the silence after an explosion, when you're checking for structural damage. Willow, our golden retriever, kept sleeping on Amelia's side of the bed, nose pointed toward the door like she was waiting for familiar footsteps. I didn't date, didn't try to fill the space she'd left behind with new relationships or distractions. Instead, I worked. Clients needed security systems, and I built them. Companies wanted digital infrastructure, and I provided it. The technical challenges felt clean, logical, solvable in ways that human behavior never had. Friends disappeared gradually, the way they do when couples divorce and people are forced to choose sides. Most of them had known Amelia longer, found her more charming at dinner parties, more accomplished in ways they could brag about to other friends. I didn't fight for their loyalty or try to explain my side of the story. Let them think what they wanted. I had the truth, documented and time-stamped. The few people who reached out got polite deflection. My brother called from Seattle, wanting details about the divorce. "Just grew apart," I told him, which was technically accurate. We'd grown apart from the moment she decided I was worth mocking instead of respecting. Amelia's mother left 2 voicemails, her voice tight with controlled anger. "I don't know what you think you're proving," she said in the second message, "but destroying her career won't fix whatever's broken in you." I deleted both messages without responding. Her mother had never liked me anyway. I was the technical support guy who'd somehow convinced her brilliant daughter to settle for domestic stability instead of the powerful husband she deserved. Now Amelia was free to find that powerful husband. She'd just have to do it while rebuilding her career from scratch. The financial settlement went through without drama. Our joint accounts were divided according to the prenup, which left me with the house, my business assets, and about 70% of our accumulated wealth. Amelia kept her 401k, her car, and whatever professional reputation she could salvage. She tried to contest the intellectual property clauses, the security systems and software I'd developed that had partially funded her legal education and early career moves. But the documentation was clear. Those assets were mine before the marriage, enhanced during the marriage with my labor, and protected by agreements she'd signed when we'd first incorporated my consulting business. Her new attorney, someone from a smaller firm in the South Hills, called to discuss more equitable arrangements. Patricia Morrison, my lawyer, shut down those conversations with the kind of polite ferocity that made me glad I'd hired her. "Your client committed adultery," Patricia told them during one conference call I'd listened to on speaker. "The prenup is explicit. She's lucky Mr. Grayson isn't pursuing financial damages for the professional systems she compromised during her affair." That was a bluff. I had no legal standing to claim damages for her ethical violations. But it worked. The settlement closed 2 weeks later. I saw Amelia once more, at a Starbucks in Shadyside 6 months after the divorce was finalized. She was sitting alone at a corner table, laptop open, looking smaller than I remembered. Her hair was different, shorter, less polished. The expensive clothes had been replaced with something more practical, the kind of outfit someone wears when they're rebuilding instead of maintaining. She looked up when I walked in, caught my eye for a moment across the crowded cafe. I could see her calculating whether to approach, weighing the social dynamics of an accidental encounter between ex-spouses who'd ended things with lawyers and legal documents instead of conversations. I ordered my coffee and left without acknowledging her. Not out of cruelty, but because we had nothing left to say to each other. She'd made her choices, I'd made mine, and the consequences had played out exactly as they should have. Later, I heard through professional networks that she'd found work at a small firm in Monroeville, handling routine family law and personal injury cases. The kind of work she'd done before Morrison, Klein, before the partnership track, before she'd decided I was something to be mocked instead of valued. The wheel had come full circle, except now she was the one starting over without a supportive partner to help build her next attempt at success. I felt nothing about her diminished circumstances. Not satisfaction, not regret, just the kind of neutral acknowledgement you might have about a stock price or weather forecast. She'd gambled with our marriage and lost. The market had corrected itself, and now we were both living with the new valuations. I stand in the kitchen at 6:30 a.m., making coffee for one. The morning routine feels smaller now, more efficient. 1 cup, 1 spoon, no need to accommodate anyone else's preferences or schedule. Willow sits by my feet, still hopeful that a second person might appear to give her extra attention. The silence isn't lonely anymore. It's purposeful, like the quiet of a workshop where someone is building something that requires concentration. I've been building a new life, piece by piece, without the background noise of someone critiquing my methods or mocking my materials. This morning's project is a security system for a medical practice in Squirrel Hill. The doctors want something that protects patient data while remaining user-friendly for staff who aren't technically sophisticated. It's the kind of challenge I've always enjoyed. Complex problems with elegant solutions, where success is measured by function rather than opinion. I don't miss Amelia. That's the truth I've had to accept over the past year. What I missed was the idea of a partner who respected what I brought to the relationship, who saw my stability as strength rather than weakness, my reliability as valuable rather than pedestrian. That woman never existed. She was a projection, a fantasy I'd maintained even as the real Amelia was photographing my text messages to share with her lover, recording my conversations to dissect for their entertainment, turning 11 years of marriage into material for their private comedy show. The real Amelia was someone who could weaponize trust, who could smile while stabbing, who could accept my love and support while fundamentally despising the man who provided it. The real Amelia was exactly the kind of person who would commit professional fraud to fund an affair, then act shocked when the evidence surfaced. I gave her everything she said she wanted: financial security, professional support, unwavering devotion, space to build her career without domestic interference. In return, she gave me contempt disguised as affection, mockery packaged as humor, and betrayal presented as personal growth. The mathematics were simple. She withdrew value from our relationship while contributing nothing but performance art. When I closed the account, she acted like I'd stolen something that belonged to her. Some mornings I think about the life we could have had if she'd been capable of basic respect. Not love. I'm not sure she was capable of that either, but simple human decency toward the person who'd helped build the platform she stood on. If she'd been honest about losing interest, we could have divorced amicably, divided assets fairly, maybe even remained friends. If she'd been professional about her career ambitions, she could have had Richard without destroying everything else. But honesty would have required her to see me as a person rather than a resource, and respect would have meant acknowledging what I'd contributed instead of minimizing it. Neither option fit her narrative about herself as a brilliant legal mind held back by an inadequate husband. So she chose mockery, fraud, and systematic betrayal, and I chose consequences. The house feels different now, not empty, but appropriately sized. I've converted Amelia's home office into a workshop for hardware projects. Her walk-in closet became storage for computer equipment. The spaces she'd claimed have been repurposed for things that actually matter to me. Friends ask if I'm ready to date again, if I'm looking for someone new. The question assumes I want to replace what I lost, that the goal is to find another partnership, another chance at domestic happiness. But I didn't lose a partnership. I ended a parasitic relationship disguised as a marriage. What I found was something more valuable: clarity about what I'm willing to accept from other people and what happens when they mistake my kindness for weakness. I pour my coffee and walk to the window overlooking my backyard. Willow follows, tail wagging hopefully. The garden looks better than it did when Amelia lived here. I've had time to properly maintain it, to plant things that will thrive rather than just look impressive for dinner party photos. Last week I heard that Amelia's working for a small firm in Monroeville now, handling family law cases and personal injury claims. The same kind of work she was doing when we met, before I helped build the foundation for everything she achieved afterward. She's starting over at 38, rebuilding a reputation she destroyed through arrogance and poor judgment, learning to live without the financial cushion my success had provided. It's not the life she'd planned when she was mocking my grocery store flowers and pedestrian gift choices. I feel nothing about her circumstances. Not satisfaction, not regret, just the neutral acknowledgement of cause and effect playing out as they should. She made choices. I responded to those choices, and now we're both living with the results. The difference is that I chose my consequences deliberately, while she stumbled into hers through a combination of entitlement and stupidity. I wanted accountability. She wanted to have everything without paying for anything. The final irony is that she got exactly what she claimed to want: freedom from the boring, reliable husband who didn't appreciate her sophisticated needs. She can date men who understand fine dining and cultural references, who won't embarrass her at firm parties with technical explanations or practical concerns. She just has to do it while working 60-hour weeks at a second-tier law firm, living in a one-bedroom apartment, driving a Honda Civic instead of the BMW I'd helped her buy. I finish my coffee and rinse the cup, loading it into the dishwasher with mechanical precision. Another day of building systems that work, solving problems that have solutions, dealing with clients who pay for value instead of expecting it as their due. Some people want closure, long conversations about what went wrong, mutual apologies, gradual healing that leads to friendship or at least peaceful coexistence. I wanted consequences, clean, permanent, proportional to the damage she'd caused. She got them. And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment below. Your support helps the algorithm push my content further. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps me keep creating more stories for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.